Welcome again.
Thanks.
The man, Raymond Dokwesi, engineer, he prefers to be called now, even though he's got a whole lot of caps on his, chieftaincy caps on his head. So, I don't know how well you know him. Lead us into how you met him first.
Well, before 1992, he ran for the presidency of this country. Most people didn't know. He was the director, some sort, in a sports authority. And so most of my townspeople, they're involved in importations. And so somehow one name continues coming up, that if you want something good to happen, if you have a problem at the port and you needed somebody to look at your papers honestly and dispassionately, that you go and see one Raymond Dokwesi. And somebody said, in this country, somebody won't take bribe. He won't tell you, see my secretary or see something. He said, no. So, it's just a story, and we lived with it until 1992 when, that was when Abiola was running for SDP, and Tofa eventually won for my party, NRC. I was chairman of NRC in Anambra State. And we had received about 6-7 candidates from across the country. And the tendency then was that when you come, there will be about 40-50 people waiting to receive you. You talk to them and then give them transport money. It's usual. So suddenly, a young man moved in with about an entourage of 10-15 people. We introduced himself and allowed him to speak. I tell you in the name of God, after 15 minutes, people started shedding tears. I never seen anything. That is my friendship with him. When I saw the topic handkerchief, I was asking him, did you remember what you said in Anambra in 1992? Because he said, the Igbos have not been well treated. We've not been rehabilitated since the end of the Civil War. I was going, if you allow me to be president of this country, to be your handkerchief.
Did he say that?
Interesting.
That's what I'm telling you what happened in 1992. And you're asking me, did he say that? I was asking him, how did the topic handkerchief come up? Did you remember what you said in Anambra?
Interesting.
And he almost shed tears because he was just speaking emotionally. He saw the nature of the environment, and he was saying he knows a lot of people have come to make one promise or the other, that he was going to be our handkerchief that will wipe out whatever the problems are. That Igbos have made so much contribution to the development of this country that he would have thought no victor, no vanquished would have meant something a lot more serious than what he was saying. And when he finished talking, instead of giving the normal 50,000, he said he was giving us 100,000. And the whole congregation said they don't need a kobo from him, that they will vote for him in Port Harcourt. And he shed tears. We did not take one kobo from him. Everybody was standing up for almost 10 minutes until they all entered their vehicles and left. And we followed him and voted for him in Port Harcourt. Even when we had two candidates, Ume Zoke, a former Speaker of the Federal House, now late, and Dr. Edwin Onwudiwe, a former commissioner in Anambra State, they were all running for president, but they didn't get, probably the votes they had was the one they chose for themselves. That was all. So that was the first impression we had of this young man. Until, since then we started interacting, until when Peter Odili was running for presidency. He was the director general of the campaign. And he just, besides, I knew Peter Odili earlier than most of them. But they collected a few of us, myself, Raymond, late Dr. Emeka Enejere, Dr. Shedrack Akaloku, and a few others. And we formed an inner caucus that after each campaign we sit down and discuss, the probabilities of this country, how we're going to move this country forward. So it's somebody I have known, honestly speaking, I don't know how many people are disposed, intellectually speaking, as he is, in discussing any matter at all. Any issue. He's prepared to discuss with you. And that's probably what this country is lacking at this point in time.
Effective leadership through intellectual engagement. Now, let's look at, you've talked about hindsight. You've gone through the trajectory. He's turning 70 today. And, what a journey. What a journey. From the man that you knew then to the man that he is now, what can you say in his becoming?
I used to say that the best form of legacy is honesty. Honesty. And it's the most difficult thing to offer. He delivered his legacy. Before 70, he already laid down his legacy. There's no way you can talk about communication in this country without talking of Raymond Dokwesi. Even if an enemy is discussing that, he must have to give him 2, 3, 4 minutes somewhere. So he's laid down his legacy for this country that is becoming unimaginable. You know, the references made, first rail power, first this, first that.
Man
What
of
else
many
is legacy? So he's made his contribution to the development of this country. And if those who have been running the affairs of our states, our local government, and the federal government took a little sit back and ask yourself, when I leave this position, what is going to be my legacy? I suppose the greatest thing to remember about his 70th birthday is what he has left behind for the rest of us.
Now, to many people, he is a man of many firsts. Pioneered the first broadcast station in Nigeria that's independently owned, and was also the one who floated the first shipping line, you know, as an engineer, marine engineer at the time as well. So, looking at his life, an engineer turned a media mogul, and now a politician as well. What would you say, because there are so many people who are in the political stage who have not anything else you can say they have bequeathed to the society apart from politics all their life, no establishment anywhere that anybody can be engaged to work. But this is a man who, apart from being a politician, also has a business where many Nigerians have been engaged to work. So looking at all of this, what would be the message you think people should learn from his life?
You know, I normally have a definition for experience as knowledge and work is equal to experience. If you don't have knowledge, you don't work, there's no way you're going to acquire experience. But you see that in this country, most people say they have experience without knowledge. So how do you get experience of what? There has to be a basic. That is why all over the world, people still go to school and acquire certificates, whether you like it or not. You have to acquire some form of certificate. When you are looking for a job in any government establishment or private establishment, they have to ask you, what did you study? It is because of it that we don't have proper means of maintaining our vehicles, our motorcycles, because those who are involved in it do not know the science of what they are doing. It is easier to dismantle an engine. Ask the same person to fix it by saying, Oyibo made a mistake. Oyibo who built it made a mistake. Is it the way I have done it now is the better way? Because we do not have the knowledge and the work to be able to have an experience of what we are doing. So you see, the attributes of being an engineering scholar from Poland, and with all the experiences he has gathered, when you read that book, Experiences of Poverty, you get delighted about being poor if you have a good mother. You know, what women do, to be honest with you, I doubt if there will be many women in hell. I believe 90% of women will be in heaven for what they do. Even bringing us forth into this world is an acknowledgement that people take for granted. I don't take it for granted. The fact that your mother can go hungry to make sure you feed, I don't take it for granted. The fact that at the end of the war, when you see people being shot for armed robbery, the last person the military will push out of that person is the person's mother. The father will never come close there. So what women do in recognition of their children is unimaginable, and it's so well explained in this book, The Handkerchief. Depending on the color you want. It's a beautiful color that in Delta, when women are dancing, they are shoving the white handkerchief. You could have a red one if you want. You could have a black one. That's why all the criminals are all over there. This handkerchief they are waving and what they are doing. You know, so I believe he uses knowledge of engineering to be able to interface with the environment and make a progress that has not affected everybody else. When he was starting this, people thought it was some kind of madness. But he needed a level of courage, a level of understanding. Most importantly, vision. Because if you have vision, you don't have courage to achieve it, then it's a disaster. And I thought God blessed him with all of them put together.
Interesting. And, you know, he also was very instructive when we were looking at the formulation of the Nigerian Shipping Policy Decree Act of 1986, amongst many things. But let's look at the politician, the man, the politician. When you talk about High Chief Dokpesi as a politician, for many, you know, he's a veteran, he's astute. For some, he's controversial. For some, he's an activist. For some, he's a voice. And I remember that he did run for chairmanship, I think, in 2017. A quite intense, campaign trail followed him across Nigeria during that momentum. As a politician, at 70 and looking at the Nigeria today, what do you think his persona has brought to bear in the Nigeria of today?
Well, I think two mistakes we have made. First, he didn't win to become a presidential candidate of NRC. Tufad won and was a disaster that happened. I mean, he lost his word to Abiola, so that's now a part of Nigerian political history. When he came out to run for the chairmanship of PDP, he only called me on telephone. I followed him to about 4 states. I introduced him in Enugu State, in Anambra, and in Ebonyi State. Even when a close friend of mine, Uche Secondus, was running, I told him that he was incompetent. I told Port Harcourt Rivers governor that this candidate you are bringing out has not the mental capacity to run a national party. He's been a very lucky person from one office to the other. But to sit down and imagine how you can use a party for the betterment of the country, doesn't have the intellectual input to do that. And they insisted and made him. You can now see the effects, how they have messed him up or attempting to mess him up. Because you don't know where the party is going. If Raymond had become the national chairman of PDP, it would have been very intellectual. Maybe some people would have left because they wouldn't know where he's coming from. You need to be prepared to come in to sit down with him. Each time we sit down, it takes us 2 or 3 hours minimum.